Good afternoon, everybody. This is James with 77 Financial Group. You're listening to 15 Minutes of Finance, where in the next 15 minutes, I bet I can get you excited about investing. Well, after the way today's going, I'm going to try. Let's do it. All right. Happy Friday, everybody. And by happy, I mean I'm just being courteous because there is nothing happy about today. Today is unequivocally, and I'll even throw in yesterday, unequivocally the worst 2 days of my career. It's been miserable because, I want to call them growing pains. These are growing pains, but it's like, why are we going through growing pains? We were just at all-time highs, 7 weeks ago. So it's very difficult to be greedy when other people are fearful and be fearful when other people are greedy. This is one of those moments. How do we be excited about stocks on sale when everything just seems to be going to the absolute dumper? It's difficult. It's difficult for me. And I do just want to say that although this is probably going to be a more monotone episode, I am still very bullish on the next 10, 15 years for the USA. Extremely bullish for the S&P 500. And it has nothing to do with presidents. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with the cultural and economical spirit of the American individual. Okay? We are absolutely poised to be phenomenally rich in the next 10 to 15 years, assuming these tariffs work out, assuming there are no wars, and assuming we don't have any other unbelievably dismal news, right? This is it. This is supposed to be it. The tariffs, that's the news. It's all priced into the market, and usually markets overreact to bad news, so it's all priced in. I want to just say that. I'm going to read the news, okay, and it's going to suck. And we're just going to do it together. And then I'm going to read you an article from 2019 from Fordham Law School, or at least a chunk of it. And it's just explaining tariffs, like what the history of them is, what the history of them are, what the history of them is. It's one of those. And then I'm going to give you guys some saving grace, some, I don't even know what you would call it, a coat rack to hang your hat on. I'm going to give you a coat rack today, okay? And I really want you to focus on it because there are two lenses to look at this through. One is the young person's lens and the other is the old person's lens. And by old, I don't mean it as an insult. I mean you've done your time. It's time to spend your money instead of investing it. And those are two very different lenses, two different points of view with what's going on. So let's read this news and let's get it over with. Let's just get the hard part out of the way, and then we can get to understanding and having a game plan, okay? All right, this is from Yahoo Finance here. So U.S. stocks cratered on Friday with the Dow Jones Industrial Average plunging more than 2,200 points after China stoked trade war fears and Fed Chair Jerome Powell warned of higher inflation and slower growth stemming from tariffs. The Dow pulled back 5.5% to enter into correction territory. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 sank nearly 6%. I've never seen that. Maybe that happened during COVID, but it was a day maybe or two. This feels more like a week. Let me see, where was I? Meanwhile, the S&P 500 sank nearly 6% as the broad-based benchmark capped its worst week since 2020. The tech-heavy NASDAQ composite dropped 5.8% to close in bear market territory. The major averages added to Thursday's $2.5 trillion wipeout. Wow. After China said it will impose additional tariffs on 34% on all U.S. products from April 10th, matching the extra 34% duties imposed by Trump on Wednesday. That ramped up investors' worries that countries are more likely to retaliate than negotiate, leading to a protracted global trade war. Investors flocked to government bonds as the 10-year Treasury yield fell to 3.9%, nearing its lowest level since October. Economists are warning that with tariffs as is, the risk of a U.S. recession is rising. The monthly jobs report, unusually overshadowed Friday, showed a labor market that held steady ahead of Trump's biggest tariffs. The U.S. added 228,000 jobs in March, beating estimates, though the unemployment rate ticked up to 4.2%. Meanwhile, Federal Reserve Chair Powell, for the first time, addressed the reality of the tariffs, saying that they were higher than anticipated. Boy, were they, Jerome. He said it is too soon to say what the proper rate path should be. Traders have ramped up bets on interest rate cuts this year to 5, as the Fed is expected to set its efforts to cool inflation aside to tackle the bigger risk of economic slowdown. Trump, posting on Truth Social Friday, added to fears by saying that his policies will never change and warning that China played it wrong. Okay. So, first off, a couple of things. It's very difficult to like Donald Trump right now. It's very difficult, and you don't have to. I don't have to. Nobody has to. I'm going to explain to you a situation why this makes sense, and then I'm going to also rant with you about why this sucks, because it does. It overall sucks. $2.5 trillion just gone. What if you're retiring? What if you're ready to live off this money? That when markets, one of the difficulties of a market downturn or a market, anytime you lose money in a portfolio, is that if you're at $100 and you go down to 80, right? So you lose 20%. I now have to gain on that 80, 40% to get back to where I was. Does that make sense? So 100 to 80 is 20%, but 80 to 100 is 40%. I think that's right. Am I doing, or is it 25%? It's 25%, I think. Guys, I'm sick. Give me a break. I've been napped and NyQuil'd up, but this was way too important of an episode to miss. Anyways, whatever you lose, you essentially effectively have to increase it by a multiple to be able to get back to where you were, which is always an issue. So let me do the math simpler so we can just do it. So 10 to 8 is 20%, and then 2 out of 8 is 25. Yeah, it is 25%. Good job. So to get back up to where you were, you have to make 25%. So it's more difficult, which is never a good conversation to have. Now, I could go into many reasons why this makes sense, right? I could go full Trumper, full MAGA, whatever they call those people, MAGA wearing folk, and just explain to you why this is the best thing ever. That's not what I believe, and it's also not what I thought was going to happen. Okay, I did not know these tariffs were going to be as bad as they were. I'll mean that. I was expecting probably an average of 10% on every country. It's significantly worse than that, and he also did it all at once. I was kind of under the impression when he was running and when we had hints about what his policies were going to be, that it was going to be an easing into this tariff situation. Maybe start with Mexico and Canada and then wait till a deal's done, and then maybe start with the Middle Eastern countries and then move on to China and the Asian countries. But that's not what happened. Everything happened all at once. So my initial claims were, I think 5,400 is the bottom, and we're past that significantly now. We are at 5,074. Okay. I own that. I was under the impression and working on data that ended up not being the truth. So that makes it extremely difficult for me to come in here and be positive about these things because we were lied to a little bit. And that makes it really, really tough to have a good outlook. So what I'm going to do instead is explain why tariffs exist and how it could be a good situation, despite the absolute turmoil the stock market is in. So first thing I would want to say is that for a recession to happen, we have to get to, for us to be quote unquote in a recession, we have to get to 4,927. Okay. So we are roughly 150 points away from that. 150 points. So we got a ways. But it could happen real quick too at the same time. So first I want to say I own that I was running on wrong data, and that stinks. It was the only thing available to us, right? We can only go off of what he says and what's available to us. So I own that. But now where we're at, there's, like I said, two lenses. One is you're old and you're living off of this money now. That's a tough one to be in, right? And that's for us as a business, that's a lot of our clients. That's a lot of our clients are living off of their money. And luckily they're not all invested in the market, right? And so, because that would be not prudent, but it's still difficult just to see, 7-8 months ago, they were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much money I got. And here we are now, it's pretty much universally wiped out. And that's a tough conversation to have. So I am going to read this article briefly. It's from Fordham University. It's a very well-written Fordham Journal of Corporate and Financial Law. It's a very well-written article by Tyler Halloran on March 17, 2019. And he just has a couple of excerpts in here that I really, really like that kind of goes into the history of it and why tariffs don't work and when they do work. Okay, so tariffs in the early United States. Among the first acts signed into law by the first Congress was the Tariff Act of 1789. The act had two purposes: to promote trade and to raise revenue for federal government. Notably, Alexander Hamilton was a strong proponent of the legislation. Hamilton viewed the act as playing key roles in protecting the burgeoning American manufacturing sector from foreign competitors and in promoting industrial growth over the long term. This law was not without controversy, but it eventually grew to be an important source of revenue for the federal government. It is estimated that in some years during the 19th century, the tariff provided as much as 95% of revenue for the federal government. Now we're moving on to the next section called the demise of the tariff. In the early 1900s, the adoption of the income tax and the tremendous industrial expansion of the late 1800s undermined the historical justifications for the tariff in two ways. The U.S. no longer needed the tariff to fund federal government, and the U.S. no longer needed to protect its industry from foreign competition. In the wake of the stock market crash of 1929, President Hoover signed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. The Smoot-Hawley Act sought to raise import duties by an average of 20%. Its goal was to protect American farmers from the economic downturn brought on by the crash. European countries promptly retaliated with tariffs of their own. Overall, the tariffs caused trade between Europe and the U.S. to decline by 2/3. Although the exact economic impact of the tariffs is difficult to quantify and is subject to debate, some observers argued that the tariffs contributed to European bank failures and exacerbated the economic turmoil of the 1930s, thereby giving rise to extremist ideologies throughout Europe. And then the next title is called The Era of Free Trade. At the end of World War II, tariffs were decreased substantially, and the U.S. went on to lead the formation of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. This was the precursor of the World Trade Organization, WTO, which has sought to promote the reduction of tariff barriers to world trade. The U.S. has continued to favor free trade and has generally disfavored tariffs in the years since. Free trade is defined as a policy to eliminate discrimination against imports and exports. Many economists argue that free trade is a net positive because it allows countries to focus on economic activities in which they have a competitive and comparative advantage. Proponents of free trade argue that by allowing nations to specialize and rely on one another for other products, there is a net positive benefit to the nations. In 2018, even with recent increases in tariffs, they represent only a small fraction of receipts by the Treasury. Okay, so now that we read that, the article is essentially saying tariffs are bad, okay? And generally, very true. Okay, now let me go back and put on my defender hat here. This is my young person's investor hat. I just wore the old person, I got to quit calling them old people, because you guys listen to this podcast too. And they're retired folk. I guess I just call them retirees. Retirees have done their time. Okay, they've been through the ups and downs of the market. It's time to enjoy the fruits of their labor. Let me put on my young person lens now, my young person hat. I could tell you that the U.S. is 4% of the global population, but it's responsible for 26% of its GDP. And I could tell you that in the 1950s and 60s, it was 40% of the GDP. Okay, I could say that. I also could say that tariffs after World War II were a gift to all of the countries that were defeated in World War II. The U.S. said, "Hey, you know what? We'll lower all these tariffs and we'll help you. We'll have free trade with you, but you can keep your tariffs on us. That's okay. We want to make sure you get to where where you can, be a successful country. Get out of the third world, right? We'll help you do that. It's okay if you tariff us, but we won't tariff you. Okay, I could say all those things. Okay, I could, but I'm not going to do it. What I'm going to do instead is tell you that tariffs work usually in small batches, which is, as I said earlier, I thought was going to happen. Instead of just, man, you thought you were getting 12 cookies at a time, but really you got 650 cookies cooked in one giant oven all at once, and you're being told to eat it. Okay, that's going to make anybody sick. The reason this could be positive for anybody who has, I would say, 5 years, 3 to 5 years of work or investing left before they're spending their money. The mountain of capitalism that all the countries in the globe have climbed, a lot of them have put their rucksack on the back of the U.S. And I was on LinkedIn earlier today having these conversations with people, just so the algorithm picks up our profile and knows that we're a resource for financial information on LinkedIn. I said it exactly like this. I said, it's since World War II, countries have been using the USA to carry their rucksack up the mountain of capitalism. It's okay if they carry their own ruck now. And I think about that visual because it's true. It's very true. The only problem is now we have to suffer. And if you guys listened to last week's episode, The Tale of Three Farms, there's only one line in there, and I wish I would have elaborated way more on it now that we're in the situation we're in, where the big farm basically says, it's okay. You're going to tariff us. We'll just start making what you make. And yeah, it'll be hard at first, but eventually we'll figure it out. That was basically the line in there, and I regret having it be so simple. I wish I would have said the truth, which is it's going to hurt bad, miserably. But if you can get through it and you're able to outlast the other farms, then the other farms will concede. And we're already kind of seeing that in this tariff trade war. Okay, Vietnam's come to the table, Israel's come to the table, Canada's making concessions. These countries are making effort to negotiate to lower tariffs. And ultimately, the only point of these tariffs from the administration is a negotiation tactic. Trump does not want to keep these tariffs in place. He would rather everybody just go to zero. Okay, and as an economist or a business person, I like that too. I think that sounds great, right? And in your head, it's like, well, yeah, why wouldn't everybody just lower? Why wouldn't everybody just lower tariffs and it be free to trade everywhere? And then here's the truth when China comes in, right? So Vietnam, Israel, Canada, these countries are coming to the table to make a deal to lower tariffs with the U.S. And China responds by increasing tariffs. Okay, increasing tariffs. China is not interested in free market. They're not interested in free trade. They're not interested in that. They've never been a free trade country. They've never been, they're not capitalistic in their functionality. They are capitalistic in the sense that they want to make the most money. And so once they realize, and this is, in the 1960s, I think, maybe it was the 70s. I can't remember what decade it was, but they were attempting to join the World Trade Organization. And what they needed to do was lower their tariffs. And they knew that with the way their population was going, they would be able to have cheap labor. And so they could charge a tariff on top of the cheap labor and therefore drive other countries to them. Okay, and they knew that. And they were going to be able to capitalize that. And they have now for 50 plus years. That is not free market in the sense that they don't care about trading with people. They care about making the most money. That's capitalistic in nature, right? It's not, hey, everybody is equal and fair. that's not good, right? And that's why they're responding the way they are, is because they basically view Trump as a bully, which he is, right? We're the largest consumers in the world. We get a little bit of authority in dictating, a little bit of leverage and how these tariffs will be enacted in trade, essentially. Global trade. The U.S. is the largest consumer in the world. There's power in that. There's leverage in that. So the rest of these countries, a majority of them, aren't like China. They do want free trade. They do care about the U.S. dollar, the consumer's dollar. Now, China's going to manipulate their currency. They're going to manipulate they manipulate everything. It's pretty egregious and maleficent. I don't know what that word. It's the only word that came to mind when I just think about how bad it is. Okay, they don't care about other people. They care about themselves, which I understand. I understand it. I just don't like it. I guess is where I would put it. The key with these tariffs is that I need to know Trump is going to, that they're strictly negotiation tactics. I don't want to see 2.5 years from now that no one came to the table and Trump's like, okay, well, we'll up them even more. I just don't see that being good for markets. I don't see that being good for anybody. Okay, now, with all that said, if we are able to wait it out, okay, this is like being in the sauna. Who can be in the sauna longer? Us or China? Us or Vietnam? Us or the EU? Whoever we have tariffs on. The benefit is we have all the water in the sauna. Okay, we have more water than the other people in the sauna. Can we stay in longer than them? Who's going to feel the heat first? We have the water. We have an advantage, a competitive advantage. We have leverage. And that's the visual I want you to think about when you hear about these trade wars going on. Because this is probably going to get hot. The sauna's probably going to heat up here for the next at least 2-3 months, I would say. Now, it's possible countries like Vietnam, Israel, other countries that they see us come into the sauna, crank up the heat and lock the door and be like, okay, we're not leaving here until there's a resolution. They might just say before even April 10th, when these are supposed to go into effect, they might say, hey, okay, I don't want any part of this. I'll root for you on the outside. We're all good. Right? And then Trump can open up the door and let them out. It's possible. I'm really hoping for it. Another thought process was that Trump is doing this so that interest rates will have to go down. He can refinance the debt, the global debt, or the national debt, and then we can have a better rate at paying that off. That would be one of the most evil things I can think of, because it's not Warren Buffett who's suffering. It's not Peter Lynch. It's not Ray Dalio. It's, Dr. Smith down the road who has $3 million that he saved for 30 years, and now he's got 1.8. And you might say, oh, wow, 1.83. Okay, you could say it's Nurse Becky who has $800,000 and now she has 490. Okay, it's pretty much middle America suffering here. And if he's intentionally crashing to lower interest rates, I could see there being an absolute rebellion occurring. Which is obviously the worst case scenario. But I'm hopeful, and I'm saying that I think it's the sauna situation. Can we stay in the sauna longer than these other countries? Can we delay our immediate gratification and beat them? Because if that does happen, and they do, if everything Trump is saying is true, and he believes that deals will be made, there'll be free trade again. If that's true, I don't even know where the market could go. Okay, it's unprecedented. It would be unbelievable how much wealth could be created in the next 5 to 10 years if the tariff relationship works out. And I hate to be the one that says, Does that make sense? Does that math check out, right? Because there's a consequence, and it's the retiree money. It's the middle American retiree money. That is absolutely the number one sufferer right now. Did Trump do that on purpose? In his head, is that sacrifice worth it? And I don't want to say, oh yeah, obviously it is. I don't feel that way. I've already started this episode saying that I feel sick to my stomach because a lot of our clients are retirees, and it's so difficult to be in this mode with them because this should be an exciting time, right? And instead it's, oh my gosh, where did my money go? However, if it does work out, there's going to be so much money. It's going to be unfathomable. And the reason for that is other countries will invest here. Okay. Interest rates will be lower, which means more cash being loaned out, more cash in people's hands. Oh, and I didn't even mention, gosh, dog, I didn't even mention the best part. So if you're listening right here, if you made it all the way to this point, this is the best part. If these tariffs happen, right, and say it's 2 months, 3 months from now, and the other rumor is that Trump wants to abolish income tax. If that happens, there's going to be such an immense amount of money in fluctuation. There will be unprecedented, and I've said that word multiple times, so I'll say it again, unprecedented. There will be an unprecedented boom in production, innovation, and I can't even, I think innovation is the only word that can come to mind right now. Things that normally would take decades to create could take weeks, months, years, because there's money involved. Money accelerates production, innovation. Okay, and if we're able to get that with the income tax, the tariff lowering trade war we have, if those two things combined happen, it will be unprecedented the amount of money people will make. And I can't think of a scenario, even if there's a war, even if there's outside of like a nuclear weapon, I guess that would probably be the worst case scenario. But if there's like another Israel-Hamas situation or Ukraine-Russia, even if events like that happen globally, the combination of lowering tariffs and abolishing income tax will be astronomical for your net worth. I promise. Okay, I promise. Another thing, too, that's probably going to be considered is the legalization of marijuana. And if that gets passed and implemented and taxed, I mean, we all know people that smoke weed, and we all know people that are not going to stop smoking weed no matter how much money they have. Okay, that is a tax that could probably be a multi-billion dollar income revenue stream for the government. So with those three things, I am bullish. I am bullish on this plan, but the plan has to be enacted. It's very important that this plan get done with a very heavy fist, meaning Trump started a fight, okay, with everybody in the sauna room. He started a fight, and he can't swing a half-closed fist. Okay, it has to be full, heavy, like weight. Your whole weight has got to go into this punch for this to work. And yeah, it hurts immediately for us. It does. I promise you I'm feeling it. Our clients are feeling it. Everybody. There's nobody who's not feeling this, okay? This is universal. And it's because it's universal is another reason why I don't think you should sell. I just don't think you should sell unless you're living off your money, which, you know, if you're a retiree and you're living off this money like some of our clients are, luckily we already had a big chunk in preparation for something like this. But if that's not you, I would tell you need to have probably at least 1 year set aside and just ready to live off of that 1 year. It's kind of a lot. Normally we would say 3 to 6 months, but 1 year really covers your bases and should give you peace of mind. And then I wouldn't liquidate anything else. That would be, and this is not sorry, gosh dang it, I'm going to get in trouble with the SEC. That's not personal advice. That's general advice, general education situation. Okay, that's what the general person should do that. If you are in a situation where you're like, I don't know what I should do, call us. Okay, we will help you. Even if you don't end up working with us, we'll still help you. Okay, Weston Walters Tax and Wealth Management is our local advisory firm, and then the overarching parent company is 77 Financial Group. Guys, we're happy to help you. And if you're wealthy, then that means that other people are getting wealthy, and the wealth will help everybody. Okay, all right, that's it. I'm done for today. I feel sick. I need to lay down and hang out with my dog and just hope that this is not as long as I think it's going to be. It's probably going to be a couple months of this. I would love it if they would just come to the table now. Just come to the table now. Just make the agreements, okay? This is, Trump is talking pretty aggressively. That's because I think the only way this plan works is if you go full heart, full heavy fist on this plan. If you kind of half-ass this, it won't work, right? It just won't work. The people, the U.S., the citizens of the U.S. will revolt. Other countries will call the bluff. It will be an absolute catastrophic event. But if you can swing with your full weight behind this fist and you land, other people might, these other countries might get out of the sauna quicker. So, all right, guys, I hope that makes sense. I've doubled up on my time here. Please reach out if you guys have questions. We're happy to help you. It's more important that we get you good answers than it is that we make money. And that's why we will make money. That's why we are good at what we do, is because we're passionate about that, about getting you set up on the right foot first. So, guys, as always, invest early, invest often. We'll see you next time.